This is one of the most delightful, hilarious first-time watches I've ever had since starting this YouTube channel. I don't know how to really properly even introduce this movie to you. All I can say right now is that I'm glad I finally saw it, and it was more than worth my time. And arguably, it's Disney's funniest movie. I've never laughed harder than I have laughed in this. Why? Let me tell you all about it. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station. Almost has a different anything and everything animation. I am all smiles right now because yesterday I got to see The Emperor's New Groove for the first time. After hearing so much praise thrown about it, I threw it in this marathon because it's a movie I knew a lot of you probably wanted me to talk about. And I'm glad I threw it in here, and I'm glad I watched it. Because this movie is a delight from start to finish. It's hilarious, it's heartfelt, it is funny, it's stylized, it's beautifully animated, and a lot of fun to watch. This is one of the most fun first-time watches I've had since I started this YouTube channel. Yes, that's really saying something. So, without further ado, let's get into the plot synopsis. And I'm going to try my best not to end up dying of laughter, because a lot of this is so funny. So, without further ado, let's dive into The Emperor's New Groove, aka probably one of the funniest Disney movies you will ever see in your life. Kuzco, voiced by David Spade, is the self-centered, spoiled, and vain emperor of the Incan Empire, brought up by his ancient head advisor Yzma, voiced by Catwoman herself, Eartha Kitt. One day he summons Pacha, voiced by John Goodman, the headman of a nearby village, to inform him that he is building his enormous summer home, Kuzcotopia, on the site of Pacha's house. Pacha attempts to protest and is dismissed. He also fires Yzma for attempting to run the kingdom while he is preoccupied, infuriating her, naturally. She, along with her easily distracted assistant and absolute hilarious Disney character known as Kronk, voiced by Patrick Warburton, then attempts to poison Kuzco so that she can take full and permanent control of the empire. Yzma invites Kuzco to a farewell dinner, and he drinks the poison, which supposedly kills him. However, he is still alive, and suddenly his ears become those of a llama. Soon his neck stretches, his hands turn into hooves, and his face turns into a snout. Yzma orders Kronk to knock the transformed Kuzco out unconscious, only after some hilarious dialogue, of course, and discovers that the supposed poison was actually a potion that turned him into a llama. Whoops. Yzma orders Kronk to dispose of him, but conscience-stricken Kronk loses the sack holding Kuzco. Kuzco ends up in Pacha's village, angrily accusing Pacha, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, of kidnapping him, and demands that Pacha help him return to the palace. Pacha refuses unless Kuzco builds a summer home elsewhere, and Kuzco attempts to find his own way home. He ends up surrounded by a pack of jaguars, only to be saved by Pacha. Meanwhile, Yzma assumes control of the nation, but when Kronk reveals that he never killed Kuzco, whoops, the two head out and begin to search the local villages for him, which means that these two have to trek through the jungle. It's just as funny as you think it is. Kuzco feigns agreement to Pacha's demand, and Pacha leads him back towards the palace. On their way across the bridge, Pacha falls through a weak plank. Kuzco refuses to help him, as he says that he would put Pacha in prison for life. But this was better. Pacha furiously yells at Kuzco, saying they shook hands on it. Kuzco replies that you need hands to do that, and he has hooves. What a little smartass. Kuzco then falls through a plank like Pacha, and he and Pacha start fighting. The bridge shortly snaps and falls. Kuzco and Pacha fall down the cliff and end up stuck at the bottom, where a river full of alligators is waiting to kill them. However, through some convincing, Pacha manages to get them to work together. They climb back up the cliff and reach the ropes to pull themselves back up. When climbing, Pacha grabs the rope, but it's stuck on a branch, which scorpions then fall into Kuzco's back, and Kuzco gets scared and falls. Pacha then grabs Kuzco, and Kuzco's face gets stuck in a hole. The scorpions then climb up Pacha's back. Pacha gets scared, smacks his back into the wall. This wakes up some bats in the wall with Kuzco, and then they attack Kuzco and launch him out of the hole. Kuzco, scared, runs up the wall with Pacha, and they land back up on the cliff. After laughing about it, the cliffside Pacha is on begins to fall. and Cusco saves him by grabbing onto Pancha's poncho and launches him back. Pancha finds out that Cusco is starting to change his ways no matter how much Cusco tries to deny it. Pancha then says that they should start going, as it's now going to be a 4-day walk to the palace since now there's no bridge. Cusco then questions Pancha about this, and Pancha says that he shook hands on it and will still take Cusco. Meanwhile, Yzma and Krunk are in the jungle looking for Cusco. After getting chased by bees, Yzma meets Bucky and screams at him. Bucky gets scared and runs to Krunk, and they start talking. This is the squirrel that Cusco insulted earlier. Yzma's mad, only until Krunk translates that Bucky said a talking llama gave him trouble. After asking for Yzma, Krunk finds out where Cusco went, and he and Yzma head off. But not before the squirrel makes her back up almost a whole mile just to talk to Krunk. Meanwhile, Cusco and Pancha are walking until they find a roadside diner and decide to eat there, with Cusco dressed like a girl, since llamas are not allowed. After Cusco talks to the chef about the food, Pancha begins to eat until Yzma and Krunk arrive shortly after, and he overhears Yzma's plans to kill Cusco. Naturally. Pancha goes to Cusco and attempts to warn him. Throughout the visit, neither party knows that the other's there, through some hilarious coincidence that they never figure it out. Cusco, convinced that Yzma is loyal, berates Pancha furiously when he tries to tell him the truth, only to overhear, after he tells off Pancha, that Yzma and Krunk not only discussing that they are seeking to kill him, but that the kingdom does not miss him. Cusco realizes that Pancha is right, but Pancha has left. After a repentant Cusco spends the night alone in the jungle, the two reunite. And of course, this is also where the whole narration thing from the beginning started. Talk more about that later. It adds so much to this movie. After becoming friends again, Cusco and Pancha race back to Pancha's house to get some supplies. While going up, two old men tell Pancha his relatives came by, and it turns out to be Yzma and Krunk. Pancha warns his pregnant wife in private. Pancha's wife and kids then launch Yzma down the hill, who ends up looking like a chicken pinata. A pinata chicken. Yzma then sees Cusco and Pancha running off. She then tells Krunk, and shortly he and Yzma race back to the palace after Cusco and Pancha. Yzma and Krunk chase them until the pursuers get hit by lightning and fall down a cliff. Cusco and Pancha arrive at Yzma's laboratory only to find that the pursuers somehow got there first, by a method which, humorously, not even they know, breaking the fourth wall in the process. Yzma passes Krunk a knife to finish the duo off. Krunk then becomes stricken with doubt as his angel and devil appear on his shoulder again, and converses with them to everyone else's confusion. Krunk changes sides after a vicious tongue lashing from Yzma and attempts to drop a chandelier on her, but her thin body allows her to escape from harm. Oops. In retaliation, she drops him down a trapdoor. The same trapdoor that he accidentally pulled on her earlier, when she told him, "Krunk, pull the lever!" That wrong lever! Yzma summons the palace guards, forcing Cusco and Pancha to grab all the transformation potions they can and flee. After trying several formulas that convert Cusco into other animals and then back into a llama again, they escape the guards but not Yzma, to find that they are down to only 2 vials. Yzma lunges onto Cusco but accidentally lands on one of the two, turning herself into a kitten. A struggle ensues and Pancha dangles from a ledge. Cusco has then grown a conscience and saves him. Yzma still almost manages to obtain the antidote, but is thwarted by the sudden reappearance of Krunk smashing her into the wall. Cusco becomes human again and sets out to redeem himself, building a much smaller summer cabin on the hill next to Pancha's home. Meanwhile, outdoorsman Krunk becomes a scout leader, with the kitten Yzma forced to be a troop member, to Krunk's pride. And that's how the movie ends. It's hard not to laugh at this. Like, even just the description is hilarious. And while it did cut out a lot of the really great jokes in this movie, it is still a delightful story from beginning to end. Yes, Cusco is an unlikable little turd, but he gets comeuppance for it, which is what makes you like him. And he develops into an actual person with a conscience, rather than an egotist that is just tyrannical and gets whatever he wants, no matter who he has to punish to do so. It's a great story, man. Like, it is such a great story, and it is hard not to laugh. Because the jokes and dialogue in this movie is hilarious. Almost every single line that comes out of either Pacha's mouth, Kronk's mouth, or Yzma's mouth is hilarious. And then Cusco also gets a few good one-liners, too. So, yeah, this was a delightful film, and the freaking plot and story is the biggest reason why. Yes, it's simple. Yes, it's something we've seen before in other movies, but they do it in such a unique way here that it still manages to stand out on its own despite its simplicity. And like I said, it's just straight up freaking hilarious. So, yeah, great plot and great story. Now let's move on to the cast, which is also great. First, we have David Spade as Emperor Cusco. He does a great job in the role. John Goodman as Pacha, and I believe this came out, a year or two after he was Sully in Monsters Incorporated. And honestly, he's about just as great in this performance as he is as Sully. And I love his character. Just such a great character. Then Eartha Kitt as Yzma is arguably her most iconic role since Catwoman. And she is so friggin' hilarious every single moment she's on screen. Like, she's kind of... the way I can describe her is imagine Dr. Doofenshmirtz. It's that same kind of character archetype. They try to be menacing, they come up with all these plans, but they fail in the most hilarious way possible, but still manage to somehow be an intimidating driving force for the protagonist to try to win. Like, it is one of the most funny comedic villains that you will ever see in a movie. And then, of course, we have Patrick Warburton as Kronk, who is arguably the most iconic character from this movie. Like, he's kind of like Patrick. He means well, you can tell he means well, and he just wants to do his job. But he's so incompetent because of his lack of intelligence, and it manages to really get some great laughs. Like, almost every single word that comes out of his mouth is a pun or a joke of some kind, and it lands every time. It's funny, and he's so great in this role. Arguably his most iconic role, in my opinion. Then we have Wendy Malick as Chica. She's great. Kellyanne Kelso as Chaka is also great. Eli Russell Linnetz as Tipo is also great. And then we have some additional voices. We have Stefan Anderson, we have Robert Bergen, we have Roger Bumpus back again, Rob Clotworthy, Jennifer Darling, Patty Dush, however you pronounce that name, as the waitress, and she's funny. John Fiedler, Miriam Flynn, Jerry Lee Gorowski, hope I'm saying that right. Jess Harnell, Sherry Lynn, Danny Mann, Mickey McGowan, D.F. Reynolds, Andre Stojak, Joe White, Steve Susskind, Mark Dindal, Tom Jones, and Frank Welker. And they're all just a great delight. Like, even all the side characters in this movie managed to be just as funny as the main cast. And that's really hard to do, but they found a way to do it, and it worked to staggeringly great effect. Then we have the music, and I think the music in this movie is also great. The orchestral score is great. Then we have the two songs. Perfect World is great. My Funny Friend and Me is also great. And then production, the lead scenes. Let's talk about the reception. The film received tons of positive reviews and currently holds an 85% fresh approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Good, it deserves it. With the Rotten Tomato consensus saying that the film Emperor's New Groove isn't the most ambitious animated movie, but its brisk pace, fresh characters, and big laughs make it for a great time for the whole family. The Emperor's New Groove made $89,302,687 at the US box office, and an additional $80 million worldwide. Totals lower than those of most Disney feature animation productions released in the 90s. New Groove and all but two of the 5 future traditional Disney feature animation films, 2002's Lilo and Stitch, which I'll review after we finish Atlantis, and 2003's Brother Bear, would sustain losses during their theatrical run. Despite it, it became a cult classic due to its positive reception, as mentioned earlier, and had strong home video releases. Sweet. Real bummer it wasn't... that's a real bummer that it was not nominated for an Oscar. It deserved it. It's such a fun, great movie. A direct-to-DVD sequel titled Kronk's New Groove was released in 2005, and a Disney Channel cartoon series, The Emperor's New School, followed, but without David Spade voicing Kuzco and John Goodman voicing Pacha, as they had in the original film and the sequel. Patrick Warburton, Eartha Kitt, and Wendy Malick did reprise their roles for the show. John Goodwin has subsequently reprised his role as Pacha for the current season of Emperor's New School. Okay, so what, is this show still going on, or is it just... I don't know. That's actually a bit boggling to me. Video games. 2 video games were developed and released concurrent with the film. The first, for the PlayStation, was developed by Disney Interactive and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. The second, for the Game Boy Color, developed by Sandbox and published by Ubisoft. Both titles were released in the PAL territories the following year. Interesting. Let me know down in the comments if you played those games and if they're actually good. If they are, I may or may not consider getting them. Maybe. And we have a trivia section. Yes! I've been waiting for this one. Pam Ziegenhagen was also the editor of Disney Toon Studios' film Mulan 2. Yeah. The Sony Pictures animated film Open Season. Okay. And the Illumination Entertainment film Despicable Me. You want to know about Despicable Me? Make sure your notification bell is on in 2024 because, yeah, I have a plan. Don't worry. This movie is the first Disney movie not to have the logo in the middle of the poster. Okay, weird fact. This is one of the few Disney animated films to use Hanna-Barbera sound effects. So if they sound like they came out of Scooby-Doo, that's why. In the original early production of the film, when it was titled Kingdom of the Sun, Owen Wilson, who would later become the voice of Lightning McQueen, was intended to provide the voice of Pacha. I'm glad it ended up being John Goodman. This is the first Disney animated feature to show a pregnant woman. Previously, Darling was pregnant off-screen in Lady and the Tramp. So this is the first Disney animated feature to actually show a pregnant woman. And it's actually pretty prevalent throughout, too, so... That's really interesting. Like, she doesn't actually, give birth or anything, but she's there, and she's very clearly pregnant. They even have a few jokes regarding that, too. So that's really interesting, this is the first one to do it, after all the other movies did not. When the people are feeding Kuzco, as the camera pans up, you can see a few hidden Mickeys on the plates as food. That's a cute little Easter egg. In the scene when the fly hits the spiderweb and gets eaten, the fly screams, "Help me!" In the same way as the classic movie The Fly, where a half-human fly is eaten by a spider. Interesting. The scene of the chimp with the bug is a subtle reference to one of the opening shots of Citizen Kane. During the opening montage of the Xanadu estate, there is a similar shot of a pair of monkeys eating bugs. Okay. Mark Scheinman was originally hired as composer, but his score was shelved and he was replaced by John Debney. This was revealed in the unreleased documentary The Sweatbox. This was the first animated movie released in theaters where Patrick Warburton lends his voice to an animated character. So this was the first time he ever voice acted. Yeah, interesting, especially considering the fact that he's most well known for Family Guy. When Chica says to Pacha, "Coming through, lady with a baby," it's a line straight from Grease. Cool. Emperor's New Groove is the first Disney animated feature film to be released the same year as the previous one. In 2000's case, the previous feature film is first live-action computer-animated dinosaur. And Fantasia 2000. Yeah. Treasure Planet would be the second one to follow, following Lilo and Stitch in 2002. Interesting. And as for the direct-to-DVD sequel, Kronk's New Groove, or the show, Emperor's New School, I have not seen either of them. I didn't even know they existed until I read this, so... I might have to check those out now, because I had such a delightful time with this movie. So, yeah, that's the music, that's the voice cast, that's the delightful story and plot, and that's trivia, and that's the box office reception. Now to my personal opinion. I love this movie, if you couldn't already tell. It's sharp-witted, it's referential, it breaks the fourth wall, it's hilarious, it's fast-paced, but it doesn't feel rushed. The characters are a delight, the story, while simple, is great, the plot's well done, the writing is sharp and very self-aware, the animation is beautiful 2D animation, Disney at its best, And while it definitely sounded silly on paper, I think it works to amazing effect here, and I can see why it became such a cult classic. Yes, it's simple. That's the only thing holding this movie back for me, is it's very simple, and it's nothing that's trying to, like, break limits of animation or storytelling or anything like that. It's something you've seen before, yes, but you've never seen it done to this kind of effect and this comedic. I can't overstate it. Like, this movie is going to make you laugh hard. And for those of you that have already seen it, I'm pretty sure you already know. I just can't stop smiling throughout this entire review. It's so hard to be critical to this movie because of how much fun I had watching it. It's heartfelt, it's emotional, it's hilarious, it's The Emperor's New Groove. It's a movie that if you haven't seen yet, you need to watch immediately. Final verdict for this delightful little cult classic is a 9 out of 10. Absolutely check this one out if you haven't already. It is absolutely more than worth your time. And it may or may not make you die of laughter. Just a heads up. Well, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Seriously, check this movie out if you haven't already. It is an absolute delight. And I will see you guys next time when we dive into another little movie you may or may not know that may shock you that I haven't actually seen before. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you all about it next time when we dive into Lilo and Stitch.